All I can say that I really can't say that. Looking over the line, yeah. Your hands are tied, but you're losing grip quick. Cause you really like. Coming your way to make us again, dreaming of the other side. Baby, I'm still the last of the I don't want you to lie.
Hello, everyone. Today is Saturday, December 11th, 2021, and this is Caperoni. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all beginning to enjoy your holiday activities. Welcome to the DinarAlert conference call. This has kind of been a while for us, so bear with us if we fumble around a little bit. As we know, we used to do these a lot more often, but there hasn't really been a lot of activity, so we just pretty much just do a year-end conference call now to get people up to speed. But we believe DinarAlert is the most advanced Iraqi dinar intel website on the net. And the path for those who have never been to the website is DinarAlert.webs.com. Concept was simple: to provide a great research site for the Iraqi dinar investor without outside influence from advertisers or dinar dealers. The plan was pretty simple. Back many, many years ago, Bob founded the site, and he put together a group of stockbrokers, technology experts, translators, bankers, and research gatherers to provide the most accurate information available in regard to the pending appreciation of the new Iraqi dinar. Then offer two great choices, the DinarAlert cellular text service and or voice call to landline to subscribers who truly wanted first knowledge upon the event. We highly recommend one of these two services to all members, as we believe this group will know before anyone else. There is a one-time fee for this. It's $7.95. The website primarily is free to use. And before we get into the call too much, we'll talk a little bit about the various tabs on the site and how to navigate around DinarAlert. We offer a public live chat room where we keep you informed and up to the minute on what's happening, and that is the chat room tab or the chat tab at the top. And then there is the research library tab where we put all of our specific research that, whether it's from the IMF, the World Bank, these are usually more lengthy documents. And of course there is the forums. And the forums are where we post daily news articles, research, and reports. And in order to get access into that forums area, it does require a monthly donation for access into the forums. And again, the chat room is compatible with all mobile devices, which is nice. And as I started to mention, these conference calls, we give you these calls with basically the up-to-the-minute analysis. They're usually hosted by Norsti, better known as the professor, and myself, Kate Baroni. We give you our unique insight and perspective into the dinar investment. You can always click on the right-hand side of the website, the conference call area. There's a big box with like a picture of the earth and some computers. You click on that and you can always go in and look at posted times and dates and or replays of previous calls and so on. Do you tweet? Do you have a Twitter account? If you do, you can now follow me. I am Kate Baroni on Twitter, and you just simply find me by searching for @KateBaroni. Integrity is important at DinarAlert, whether you're simply reading a post from one of our volunteer researchers or browsing the forums or research library. Getting quality information without false rumors or hype is imperative. Knowing the motives or incentive of a website is also just as important. At DinarAlert, we avoid all of these issues by not having any contractual advertisers or dealer influence. DinarAlert is solely supported by its members, for its members, and any item purchased on the website supports the operational expenses of DinarAlert. Brandon, who was running the website pretty much every day, kind of backed off a little bit the last few months. He did it on behalf of his father, who passed away. I think everyone who's been part of the site for a long time realized that Bob started this site many years ago and died about a little over 2.5 years ago or so. And when he started this site, he had no advertisers. It relies now solely on donations to cover its operational expenses to run the website. As I mentioned previously, a donation is required for access into the forums, and if you have any trouble with a donation or getting access to the forums, you can click on the Contact Us tab and ask for help. Brandon will promptly get back to you. As I mentioned, we only hold these calls when we believe we have factual information that benefits its members. You won't hear made-up stories or concocted information on this call. You won't read any of that as well on the website. Bob was so ahead of his time many, many years ago when he created DinarAlert for those who truly care about learning the truth about the Iraqi dinar investment. So tonight is our year-end call to recap the latest events and what to look forward to next year. So on behalf of our staff, moderators, myself, Kate Baroni, LaDonna, Revbo, Mike, Tammy44, and Administrator T-Girl, we'd like to welcome you to the DinarAlert year-end conference call. Again, if you haven't been to the website or if you would like to go there, you can check it out. It's www.dinaralert.webs.com, or you can simply go to Google and type in the words Dinar, D-I-N-A-R-A-L-E-R-T, DinarAlert. Before I get too far into the call here, I always like to tell people a little bit about myself. I am Kate Baroni. I've studied the Iraqi dinar investment now for over 13 years. I've written hundreds of research chats and papers and various posts. I do this to educate and inform even the most novice investor. I came over to DinarAlert with my friends and my contacts and an Arabic translator many years ago to do the best I can to inform or provide information. I do not try to mislead or create any hype. I think most of you know I'm kind of more pessimistic than anything, but you know, I get excited from time to time. This team assembled here over the years has followed, educated, and dissected the progress in Iraq. In many instances, with our research, we are like detectives. We put the pieces of the puzzle together. All of these posts are in the Kate Baroni and Friends section for your reading within the forums. I think I can't say it often enough. You know, if you have questions about this investment or you specifically on a topic, the Kate Baroni and Friends section has just a ton of research that we did over the years, and it's all compiled in there. And so you can really become a student of your investment if you take time to go into that area and read those chats. I encourage all of you to listen and to study this investment. I've done my best to provide accurate chats that are posted in the DinarAlert forums. Please go and read those chats. We believe in a fact-based research. DinarAlert's slogan is no rumors, no hype, just solid intel regarding the new Iraqi dinar. So I'm proud to say tonight that this is all done with the help of many contributors, some of which are on the call, our admins, our article researchers, chat room mods, all make it work, and we need to thank them. For those listening in for the first time, this call may be very eye-opening. We're about facts and truth and learning the process, the fundamentals of how monetary policy works, how it interacts with a transitional economy. There are no arbitrary revaluations or reinstatements. That's all guru nonsense. That's not how monetary policy works. Monetary policy is like any other technical occupation, such as your doctor. You know, a doctor will give you drugs. No doctor is going to give you a random drug and hope that it cures the patient. A doctor will always perform tests, etc., to diagnose the problem before administering any treatment. This is similar to how the CBI works. The CBI has to follow strict rules, processes, as well as rules and processes from the IMF. And they use this information to design a monetary policy that combats the effects of a growing economy. These are proven strategies and techniques used by other central banks as well. So tonight we'll talk a little bit about these the best way we can to help you become educated in this process. So tonight's call, we have Enorsti, better known as the Professor. We hope tonight to bring you some great insights, some perspective and clarification into this investment. So let's get started. Steve, are you out there?
I'm here.
All right. Anything you want to say before we get started?
Been a long time. What's it been, almost a year? Maybe more than a year. Seems like it. So I'm ready.
Yeah, it's been quite a long time. But again, you know, last year when we did this call, we kind of basically laid it out for what we were waiting to see. And a lot of those ambitions weren't achieved over the last year or so. There really was no necessity for a call. But I think tonight is going to be a little different in a sense. I think we're going to kind of point out what Iraq did, and not only what they did, what their plan is. And I think we've got sufficient articles to show you that they're making significant progress, or they're beginning to achieve what that plan really is. So I think you can come away from the call tonight kind of confident that Iraq has actually accomplished some things over the last year.
I agree.
This is a pretty complicated time in Iraq right now. Iraq remains in a political crisis. They concluded just an election just a couple of months ago and have yet to come to a consensus on the formation of the new government and who the prime minister and president will be, of course. They continue to have significant financial and economic issues to deal with, and of course they still have to deal with the effects of COVID-19 and inflation, just like we are here in the United States, all while trying to implement economic reforms, and specifically to create a private sector. Iraq has made it clear that they have a plan to move and launch significant investment projects, move towards a market economy, and diversify their revenue and just not be reliant on oil. But as we've talked about in the past, and Steve, you can confirm this, passing laws through Parliament remain a key component to getting investors and investment into Iraq. Since the parliamentary elections, there have been no sessions. The ministers have not been sworn in yet. And they need to before they can begin to review and pass legislation. We're waiting on the formation of the new government so the parliament can begin its work. As most are aware, this time last year the central bank devalued the dinar from 1170 to 1460. This devaluation was deliberate with the intent to stimulate the Iraqi economy, to create jobs and manufacturing and produce items in or within Iraq rather than to pay higher prices for those items and importing them. The central bank stated this was a one-time devaluation and will last probably a year well into 2022. There are other benefits as well, including the demand on the dollar. The gurus like to put a twist on this event as a means to lure dinar from homes or reduce from circulation. This is not the case, since reducing one currency or the other in circulation affects the exchange rate under the auction system. The auctions work in a way to keep the dinar stable under Article 14. These also provide dollars to pay for imports, but this has been abused over the years, hurting the central bank's reserves. Changing the rate has reduced demand on the dollar. This has resulted in a 20% reduction in the dinar exchange rate, which means dollars now cost 20% more. The alternative is to manufacture within Iraq rather than import. As a result, as well, it now requires more dinar to acquire the same amount of dollars, so the demand for the dinar has gone up. And because it requires more dinar, the money supply has increased. At this time last year, it was right around 42 trillion dinar in circulation. Now it's over 100 trillion dinar in circulation. Again, the lying gurus will say that they are reducing the dinar, or a rev is about to happen. I think I read that just about every day in various news sites. And small denominations and the phone centers and all this stuff are manned and ready to go. This is simply not the truth. So tonight we're going to cover a few articles describing Iraq's plan over the next year. We also will talk about what Iraq is really doing regarding the economy and the banking system. I encourage those who have not read the government's white paper to read them. They've been translated, and they're under the government news section in the forums. There's a sticky at the top so that those white papers will always remain at the top. A sticky is like a thumbtack. So if you go under government news and then you go to the top, you'll see a little thumbtack type of thing and it says government white papers, and you can go in there and you can read them for yourself. You don't have to listen to somebody who says that, or read some comment by someone who says that there's an RV in the white papers and all this other stuff. So, all right, so we might as well get started with the most encouraging articles as of late. Specifically in the last couple of days, there was an article that came out. It was titled, "Iraq Will Leave Chapter 7 in Early 2022. Steve, do you want to comment before we get going?
Well, yes. First, I'd like to say that I think your summary there, the first 5 minutes, was wonderful. You really laid it out as clearly as could be laid out, and point out the fact that an RV is not in the cards, but that there is good news, and that eventually we will get what we want. So that's important. Now, what you're going to read now is just really kind of took me aback, because as we all who listen to this call have thought, we thought Iraq was out of Chapter 7 all for years now. Well, it turns out there's been a little bit of a snag, and you're going to tell us all about it. So I'll go ahead, and either way, it's going to be good news. Go ahead.
Okay, I think before I read this article, I'm just going to clarify, because there's a lot of confusion. People get confused, like, what is United Nations Chapter 7? Is that a form of bankruptcy? And then there's also a term that the world, or the IMF uses. They call Article 8 and Article 14. Even though they're under the same umbrella where the United Nations controls or runs the IMF, they're separate entities, and these are separate processes, chapters. Yeah, they're not related to each other. Chapter 7 is under the United Nations, and it's really, I guess a definition would be it's where the world kind of provides supervision and guidance over another country, or direction.
Yeah, sanctions and fines, basically.
Right.
For doing bad stuff.
And as a result of the war, the United Nations put Iraq under United Nations Chapter 7 until they fulfilled the responsibilities or directives that were created as a result of that war. And so we have been talking about these Chapter 7 for quite a long period of time, because there has been several meetings within the UN where they have referenced that they were going to get out of Chapter 7, but as Steve mentioned, there's some confusion there, and this article that just came out a couple of days ago kind of clarifies it. So it says the chairman of the Committee of Financial Experts, Dr. Abdul Basit Turki, who, by the way, used to run the Central Bank of Iraq for about a year, expected that Iraq will get rid early next year of the risk of failing under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations after fulfilling its financial obligations related to the compensating the state of Kuwait for the losses it incurred as a result of the Iraq's invasion of it in August of 1990. According to Turkey, whose committee supervises the Iraqi funds derived from the production and export of oil and petroleum products and deposited in the sub-account with the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, the Central Bank of Iraq will pay the entire remaining amount of compensatory or compensation directly after stopping the automatic deduction. In an interview with Ashard Al-Awasat, Turkey called for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the concerned authorities to urge the formulation of a draft resolution that includes removing Iraq from the provisions of Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter completely. The Iraqi government intends to pay the last batch of compensation for the Kuwaiti war before the end of this year, after depositing the day before yesterday, Tuesday, more than $207 million with the Federal Reserve as a prelude to removing Iraq from Chapter 7. Turkey explained that the Federal Reserve 2 days ago, specifically hours after paying the pre-ultimate payment, stopped the automatic deduction from the account of the Iraqi Ministry of Finance with it in the interest of the Kuwait War Compensation Fund, following a request made by the Central Bank of Iraq. He noted the need for the forthcoming decision to stipulate protecting Iraq from any claims related to the compensation of the Kuwaiti war, whether it is individual claims or filing lawsuits related to compensation, calling for the cancellation of all decisions that resulted from the Kuwaiti war. The UN Compensation Committee was formed in 1991, obligated Baghdad to pay $52.4 billion in compensation to individuals, companies, governmental organizations, and others who incurred losses resulting directly from the invasion of Kuwait. Iraq stopped making payments in 2014 during the war on ISIS, which controlled large parts of the country, but it resumed payments in 2018. The former Iraqi Foreign Minister Bashar Zabari announced in June of the year 2013 that the Security Council decided to remove Iraq from under Chapter 7, and the resolution became number 2108 and considered this a historic day. And I'm going to interrupt you. I remember that. I talked about it. I think we kind of agreed that they probably were out. Nobody really brought up the fact that they still had compensation to pay to Kuwait, but this article does make a great deal of sense now, stating that if they wanted to get out of UN Chapter 7, really technically, until they paid them off, they really wouldn't get the blessing or the that vote that's probably required. So. Continuing on here, it says, Turkey describes Zabari's statement as inaccurate and misleading because the Council's resolution stipulated stopping the use of force against Iraq only. Contrary to reality, in Turkey's words, Zabari said that after the resolution was issued, Iraq became liberated from the regime of sanctions and isolation. Turkey said the restrictions are still in force because Iraq has not completely escaped the provisions of Chapter 7, despite Zabari's assertion at the time that Iraq had returned to occupy its natural financial and banking position. In a related context, according to the financial advisor to the Iraqi Prime Minister, Mazar Mohammed Salih, Iraq will end Kuwait's compensation file in early 2022. Salih said in a press statement earlier that Iraq had finally paid $490 million of the compensation amount approved by the United Nations Compensation Committee and will work to pay the remaining amount of the total compensation estimated at $629 million at the beginning of 2022 to close the compensation file permanently. Yesterday, the Central Bank of Iraq received a notification from the General Secretary of the United Nations in Geneva indicating that the remaining amount of compensation is $43 million. It is noteworthy that the Committee of Financial Experts headed by Dr. Abdul Basit Turki, a former head of the Financial Supervision Bureau, and the Central Bank was established based on a decision of the Council of Ministers and began its work in early April 2007 to be an alternative supervisory body for the International Advisory and Monetary Board, which is currently supervising the expenditure of Iraq public funds derived from the production and export of oil and petroleum products, which are deposited in an opening account at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York based on Security Council resolution issued after the overthrow of President of the late Saddam Hussein on behalf of the Development Fund for Iraq. The account has been granted international immunity so that it is not subject to seizure or confiscation as a result of the decisions of international courts, which may be issued by lawsuits and claims against the former regime. The Development Fund for Iraq and other accounts were established by the Security Council Resolution 1483 in May 2003 to manage the revenues of crude oil and oil production from Iraq, the remaining balance of the oil for food program, and receipts from frozen assets from the former regime. It is expected that the Central Bank of Iraq will pay the last installment before the end of this year. Thus, Iraq has paid $52.38 billion in compensation for the repercussions of its invasion of Kuwait. So, Steve, what do you say?
Well, it's a powerful, powerful statement. Well, first of all, you're right. We all thought they were out, and it turns out that they were out from under sanctions and I think certain lawsuits, as the article said, but they still owed money, and so that was the bottom line. Then they set up this account to automatically pay every month a certain amount, but that all stopped during ISIS, the war on ISIS, but was recontinued. They still owe several more automatic payments, but they've now canceled the automatic payments and will make one final payment of whatever it was, $207 million, and that will free them completely of any obligation to Kuwait, thus opening the door for them to be completely removed from Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which means that they no longer will be under any restrictions internationally with respect to the United Nations. Now, that does not say that they're not under any restrictions from the IMF. That's something else, which if you want to talk about, we can, but that at least under this one now, they can finally do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it as of the end of this year.
Right. You know, I just want to put a little asterisk on that, though, because I would assume, because in previous instances, the United Nations has had to address this matter on their agenda. So I would assume that the Central Bank of Iraq will make that payment, and then shortly after, within a month or two, there will be a request at the United Nations saying that payment has been made in full and they would like to be removed from the United Nations Chapter 7. And the discussion would occur at the United Nations, and then there would probably be a vote, and that would be the end of.
Yeah, but yes, I agree, but that could happen really quickly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they've been waiting 10 years for this, so.
Quickly meaning a couple of months, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think at the most. Yeah. Iraq will end Kuwait's compensation pile in early 2022. So I think it'll happen first quarter.
And this is significant. Yeah, it's significant in reestablishing themselves as a sovereign country, not being under the thumb of the United Nations as far as these war reparations and directives that they can impose. They become like any other country at that point.
Yeah, yes, and they're no longer liable for suit. Even under the program for paying this $52 billion back over the last, whatever it is, 32 years, even under that program, they had to say that you cannot be sued because you're being paid. Just wait. Well, now that they've paid them, they still can't be sued. So that's the important thing. When they get freed, no one will be able to sue them over the Iraq-Kuwait war situation. It'll be over, finally over. That's important because they not only regain freedom from what's called isolation, but they also regain freedom from sanctions. They will no longer be able to be sued for reparations.
Which is obviously a significant.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge. basically, it's like trying to do commerce with one hand tied behind your back. You can't do it if you're afraid you're going to get sued. No wonder nobody's coming in here to invest, or very few, because they're afraid that the UN could step in and say, well, these guys made all this money. We don't care if American money made it. We're going to take it to pay Kuwait. Well, now that's all going to end, and they won't be able to do that. So there's no reason now that I can see, other than the laws that still have to be passed. There's no reason internationally, at least, that countries should not be willing to invest in Iraq. Out of fear, sure. They still need an FICA type program, bank protection program. Those things are all internal. But the point is, somebody going in there investing a couple $1 billion to rebuild Babylon and turn it into a tourist site isn't going to end up finding out that, guess what, all the profits get taken by the United Nations and paid back to Kuwait or something stupid like that. That's just not going to happen anymore. So, and that's good.
Right. All right, so let's move on. Another thing that's been discussed recently, again, we can comment on this as we go, is facilitating Iraq's WTO accession process. This has been going on for many years. There's been a lot of talk off and on. And just a couple of weeks ago, there was a few articles out on facilitating Iraq's WTO accession process in collaboration with the Iraq's National Committee. There was a technical session organized on the 23rd of November in Baghdad. The session provided a comprehensive overview of the accession process and highlighted the critical role of the National Committee on WTO accession in the process. Iraq initiated its process to the WTO accession in 2004, but due to political and economic instability, this was stalled until 2017, when Iraq expressed interest in reinstatement and their determination to join the WTO. Since then, Iraq has made considerable progress in this front, including the recent submission of key technical documents to the WTO Secretariat. Representatives from various government institutions from Baghdad and the Kurdistan region of Iraq, including officials from the Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Industry, participated in the session. Various private sector institutions also attended. The workshop was organized by the International Trade Center, ITC, a joint agency of the World Trade Organization and the United Nations, through the Strengthening the Agriculture and Agri-Food Value Chain and Improving Trade Policy in Iraq, the SAAVI project. Funded by the European Union, EU, the project is contributing to inclusive economic growth and job creation, particularly for youth, by improving Iraq's agriculture competitiveness and supporting trade development. It is also particularly focused on providing support to Iraq in the process of ascending to the WTO. Mr. Adel Al-Masoudi, Director General, Foreign Economic Relations Department, Ministry of Trade, opened the day and reaffirmed Iraq's commitment to the accession to the WTO and assured the support of his team to the SAAVI project. In his opening remarks, Mr. Al-Masoudi also recognized and congratulated the process that has been made in Iraq's accession progress through ITC's SAAVI project. The delegation of the European Union to Iraq was also present at the event and was represented by Mr. Maru Gio, who stated that becoming a member of the WTO will result in a reduction in trade barriers, predictability, and transparency of international trade rules, and increased competitiveness, all of which increase trade for Iraq, adding that the advantages gained by a new WTO member are always greater than the potential losses that some economic actors may initially face. Overall, the whole country wins. On behalf of ITC, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, the Director of the Division of Market Development, opened the session. In his remarks, Mr. Agarwal focused on the importance of a strong national committee in place to progress on WTO accession. The National Committee provides a platform for both the public and private sector to come together and to take key decisions in line with national priorities and domestic policy reform, he said. The workshop provided an opportunity to reassemble members of the National Committee on WTO accession. Created in 2004 through the ministerial order, participants were updated by the Ministry of Trade of Iraq about the recent development which occurred in relation to Iraq's accession process to the WTO. This was followed by a number of technical sessions aimed at the building a common understanding of all members with respect to substantive procedural matters of immediate relevance for Iraq's accession to the WTO. The session part of a series of capacity building sessions that will be organized through SAAVI project to support Iraq to ascend to the WTO.
Well, these are one of those typical I hope it happens articles, you know. I mean, we've seen these so many times over the years, and they've been trying to get in for so many years. And of course, back in way back in 04, they started, but then it was all stalled until 17. Now, for the last 5 years, they're still trying to get in. At least this time, it's bubbled to the surface, and the National Committee's been reestablished, which is good. We have no way of knowing from this article what timing is involved, however. I suppose that after the first of the year, when the when the UN completely releases them from the sanctions of the Chapter 7, then the next step will be for this group to go to the IMF and ask to be placed back under Chapter 8 of their code, which will allow them to join the world of nations. You can't join the WTO unless you're part of the whole world. So they're going to have, maybe you don't agree with me, but it seems to me they'd almost have to happen simultaneously. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I do agree. You know, there's been articles in the past regarding accession that, and again, what the WTO represents is exporting products from your own country and selling it globally, and Iraq never really had products to export, and it's well documented that Iraq is primarily dependent on oil, and
right.
Oil doesn't fall under the WTO. So until I read, in fact, I think it was about 2 years ago, an article came out and said until you have something to export, there really is no need to even talk about getting in the WTO. But now, you know, they still don't have a lot. I mean, they're still probably, I would say, close to 90% dependent on oil, maybe 80% at best. But
you're going to read an article tonight that says 90%.
Right. So, you know, but they are exporting some things. I know they're making some vegetable oils. I know they're making they're exporting some nuts, various types of nuts that they grow in Iraq. And of course, there's some fruit that they are exporting because and produce because they are growing. They do have a fairly good agriculture program that's starting to grow where there's self-sustainability within Iraq, so they can sell some of their extras outside the country. And of course, they have several cement plants now where they're, you know, making cement and so on. So if that's enough, I don't know, but they're beginning.
Yeah, the previous article seemed to indicate that the agriculture was going to be a big push. That when they get out of the Chapter 7 from the UN, that there's going to be a big push on the part of Iraq itself to build its agricultural sector primarily.
Yeah, and that of course.
You know, they got you think about it, it's all desert down there, and except for that Tigris-Euphrates River Valley, and for thousands of years they build these canals that go, these channels that go off east and west, off those two rivers, and they can grow a tremendous amount of food products. They could feed the whole Middle East if they wanted to. They just have to do it. And these programs that were in the last article, something about youth being employed and all that, I think that's probably all geared toward growing something simple like plants. Manufacturing will come later, but and tourism, of course, is going to be a huge thing. I think eventually tourism is going to be an enormous growth sector when they rebuild Babylon, which I think they won't rebuild it, but they'll turn it into a Disneyland. Well, I think it'll be a huge tourist trap. I think it'll be huge, enormous.
Right.
Some of the oldest places, literally the oldest places in the world, are located right here in this country. So.
Well, I have one more article regarding the WTO that I think kind of focuses in on a couple of areas that. So I think this will give us a little more clarity, and I wanted to kind of just go through this one as well, because I do think it's important, because we've talked about this for years too, that one of the statements or comments that were made many, many years ago by the committee that was overseeing Iraq's accession, it basically said until they had a currency that was more on par with the US dollar, it would be very difficult for them to do trade. So a lot of people have taken this as something that could help motivate them to raise the value of the dinar. And so this, like you were saying a little while ago, that if Iraq pays off this compensation to Kuwait, and the UN releases them from UN Chapter 7, so that they have, they are, on their own, and there's no more further restrictions upon them, then for them to go to the IMF and say, we've maintained stability with our banking system now for many years. I think it's time for us to move from Article 14 of the IMF Code to Article 8, which would allow the banking system then to engage with the global financial system. Then that would be that might help persuade them to do that, because the WTO is coming shortly thereafter, and of course we know that they need to have that banking system in place in order to support it.
Doesn't do any good to be in the WTO if you can't trade.
Yeah, if you can't, if you're trading
a World Trade Organization, if you can't trade.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they would allow them to trade in another currency like the dollar.
No, there's no way. That's the whole thing. Article 14 gives them protection against those lawsuits. Well, if the UN says you're freed from all lawsuits, then there's no reason to remain in Article 14. So then they go to Article 8, which means we're going to play with the big boys, and that means that their currency has to be internationally tradable, and that allows them to join the WTO. They all have to come together, in my view. Don't you think so?
Well, I do. I just don't. I don't know the exact procedures or process, but it looks like they're all directly interrelated.
Exactly,
sure.
They're related. You can't do one without the other, so they almost have to happen simultaneously.
Right. So this article says trade announces the imminence of Iraq's accession to the World Trade Organization. The Ministry of Commerce revealed today, this was a couple of weeks ago, an upcoming visit of the minister to Geneva to discuss Iraq's accession to the World Trade Organization, while indicating Iraq needs to pass laws and legislation to support its position internationally.
No, go ahead and read on.
The official spokesman for the Ministry of Commerce, Mohammed Hanoun said the Ministry of Commerce is mobilizing its efforts towards Iraq's accession to the World Trade Organization, and its minister and at the head of the government delegation will go to Geneva next week to reach an agreement with the European trade ministers and European countries regarding accession. He stressed that we look forward to finalizing the file of Iraq's accession to the World Trade Organization soon, noting that the accession process is complex and includes many great conditions. He pointed out that Iraq needs to pass laws and legislation on many topics, including the economy, customs, and other required details and controls. He explained the Ministry of Commerce has prepared an integrated file, and we hope to discuss it with the European side with the arm of joining the organization. So again, it comes back to Parliament. It comes back to the government forming the new government, getting the Prime Minister in place, the new President in place, swearing in the parliamentary members, and of course then they're going to have this in front of them in the early part of next year. They're going to have an urgency to pass these laws so that they can get into these organizations.
Right. Getting out of Chapter 7 from the UN is just the beginning, but if they don't follow through with passing laws on economy, customs, and required details and controls, they're not going to get to the WTO, and they're certainly not going to get into Article 8 of the IMF Charter. So they've got to do it almost all at once, and the big thing has always been the same. I hate the word soon in every article, we're going to do this soon or in the coming days, It's always the same old thing. It's been years. But if they want to do anything at this point, they got to, pardon my French, shoot poop or get off the pot.
Yeah, but that's what's nice about this conference call tonight is I think that we're really showing, and again, hopefully by the end it'll be even greater, but I think we're really showing that over the last year, even though we haven't really seen any results, you can see that there's it's all coming together here.
It's the momentum, yeah.
Yeah, the momentum.
Growing. The whole world is now saying, all right, it's time, finally. We're all coming together, and now it's your turn. And it really is Iraq's turn because the laws have to be passed. Otherwise, nothing will happen.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, don't you agree with that? I mean, it seems
absolutely.
You've been preaching on this for 3 years. Well, they still need this law to pass. They still need that law, this law, that law. Do they even have a decent FICA insurance? I don't think so. Maybe they have something, but it's nothing like what the international community wants. They want investors to have some protection. At least now they're going to have protection from having these assets taken away by sanctions. That's important. That's a big thing, because the sanctions were coming from the international community, that is the UN, through the UN. So if with that gone, there's really no reason for them, for investors in that sense. There's no reason for the investors not to join in. They're not going to get their profits taken by the UN. They may get sued for other reasons, which is our typical world. People sue for no reason at all. People sue all the time. You stepped over my lawn, I'm going to sue you. But that's different. That's normal lawsuits. Everybody can deal with that. But what Iraq needs is laws now within the country that gives some protection to local and international investors, so that the profits that they earn can be taken out of the country. And that's I don't think those laws exist. Yeah.
Well, yes. Correct. Some may exist, but they're not active. I can agree.
Well, yeah, you told me that they pass them and then they don't activate them. It's kind of weird. We don't do that way. But you say they have to. It's one thing for them to pass them, but then they got to publish them and all this crap and activate them now. And
I've stated that people that follow me on Twitter have known that I've constantly bashed the gurus who talk gibberish and nonsense, and by stating that until these laws are passed, none of this stuff is going to happen. So
that's right.
All right. So what is the Central Bank of Iraq's plan? People think of just the Central Bank of Iraq as monetary policy and managing the currency and the exchange rate, but and that may have been primarily what they do, or at least what they did back under Shabibi. Because I remember back when Shabibi was running the Central Bank of Iraq, he was kind of upset. He wanted to move forward with monetary reform, and and the government didn't want him to, and so on. But he always considered the central bank a separate entity. Well, the central bank is a separate entity, but they are now broadening their scope of. They are doing much more than monetary policy and exchange rate policy. They are facilitating all of this economic movement in the country. So here's a little article that came out just a couple of weeks ago. It says the Central Bank of Iraq Initiative. And I wanted to read this because it kind of tells you what the central bank is doing or how it's participating in all of these things that we've been talking about tonight. The aim of the success of the bank's initiative, which is contributing to supporting many small and medium enterprises and working to move the wheel of the Iraqi economy by revitalizing the private sector and with the aim of advancing the economic and service reality, our bank and its subsidiaries, the Main and Erbil, will promote and receive requests from the private public for this initiative. So they're getting involved in creating this market economy.
Exactly.
They're creating.
Yeah, they're not. They're saying, okay, we're open for business, basically. We're ID.
Right.
Yeah, they're not going to participate financially necessarily, but they're open to showing people how the system works, and they're saying, we're ready to promote and receive requests, which means promote and receive. So they're willing to offer suggestions and also take requests and answer them from both the private and the public sector, which is good.
Absolutely. So, and then I have another article here. And of course, this was something that's been occurring for the past year, and I think it was important. I think we need to kind of clarify a little bit. It's also one of the other initiatives by the central bank. The central bank is launching a strategy that advances the reality of electronic payment. Some people were confused, I think, in Iraq, or some people that were reading articles from Iraq about them going electronic, thinking that it's similar to like Bitcoin or some other currency like that, but that's not what they're talking about. The central bank is talking about what like other developed countries of the world are, where it's a cashless society and everything is done electronically, whether it's ATM machines, debit cards, wire transfers, electronic banking. It's the Iraqi dinar, but it will be paid, transferred payments, settlements, all of that will be done all done electronically.
Right.
So they've been working on this for a while.
The whole world is moving that direction, as we all know, of course.
Right, and this is something that Iraq has had a difficult time doing because it is a paper society in Iraq, and because of that, there's an abundance of Iraqi dinar that's being held physically in people's homes, whether it's in mattresses and so on. And so Iraq is trying to get rid of the paper, at the same time initiate this electronic money within the country so that the money supply remains the same or is reduced or whatever appropriately, but the physical paper has to go away at some point. And so This article came out a couple of months ago. Again, this is something that Iraq has been working on for the entire year pretty much. And of course, you can't cover every article in a conference call, but this one kind of sums it up. It says, economists and specialists unanimously agreed on the solidifying of the banking system in Iraq to be an effective supporter of the economic development process, and at the same time, the central bank confirmed the imminent launch of a payment strategy in addition to the stability of the current exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar against the dollar. This came on the sidelines of the Murray Conference, which was organized by the Middle East Research Foundation and dealt in its economic detail with the role of the financial sector in achieving development and standing up to the challenges it faces. President of the Middle East Foundation, D. Lawyer Aladdin, said Iraq is important to the countries of the region and contributes to achieving balance, which requires maintaining its stability, indicating the importance of benefiting from the experience that despite the epidemic, managed to achieve success in its own economic sectors. As for the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, Amar Hamad Khalaf, indicated that the central bank is heading to launch a strategy for payments aimed at upgrading payment mechanisms to global and shifting from cash to electronic payment in cooperation with specialized international organizations, pointing out that the citizen is interacting with this trend after the base of beneficiaries expanded from the settlement of salaries for employees and retirees. So what they're saying is that the public is finally beginning to accept this now, because for about a year or two, they've been paying people electronically in the country. When your salary comes due, it's electronically, and when your retirement is done electronically. And so now they're starting to embrace it. So the CBI is having success at upgrading this payment system. Khalif said there are no trends to change the exchange. There is no trend to change the exchange rate and reduce the value of the currency, and changing the exchange rate during close periods destroys the economy and has significant negative effects. And again, this is under the current circumstances where they're trying to stimulate economic growth within the country. It makes no sense to change the value or raise the value as we would like it to occur until they create the economy. I've always said, until Iraq builds a market economy and have economic growth, there won't be any change in the value of the dinar. And so this gentleman here is just, reiterating what we already know. And he said since 2015, the central bank has provided lending initiatives to reach the real beneficiaries, and during the 2 years it has loaned 2,000 citizens to purchase housing units in the lending process. As for the head of the Association of Private Banks in Iraq, Wadi Al-Handel, he addressed the reality of the Iraqi economy, describing it as rentierism and depositing 90% of the revenues in government banks, pointing out that the bank cannot lend half their capital. He pointed out the initiatives of the central bank activated the lending process to the beneficiaries of the society groups, especially the youth, notating that the youth have organizations that serve the country through pioneering projects that have a positive impact on the economy and can benefit from successful experiences. He focused on the training detail and its role in refining youth talent in various disciplines, in addition to paying attention to the education, developing its tools and curricula, and stabilizing all its pillars, as well as instilling the spirit of performance as a team to achieve success in the job. The money specialist, Camilla Abdul Seda Curry, confirmed that the banking system operates according to the instructions of the Central Bank of Iraq and faces a number of challenges, foremost of which is the lack of public confidence in the banking system, as strengthening the public's relationship with banks is an important step to raise the capabilities of banks. She pointed out that the communicating with the global financial sector represents an important step in creating an advanced banking sector capable of providing the best services to the audiences and beneficiaries, pointing to the importance of advancing the reality of financial liquidity management in Iraq. And she cautioned on that creating a database of the public borrowers is necessary to enhance the financial services and provide it to the public. Steve, you want to comment?
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. I've often said this is like the Old West. You know, back in the Old West, people were afraid to put money in their banks because they had people like Jesse James come along and take it. Well, there's just not a lot of confidence in the banks. But once you see that, well, first, all federal employees are paid electronically. Well, I think about 60% of the people in the country work for the government, though they're paid by the government.
Yep. Yep.
And now employees are starting to get paid by electronic transfers. So it's gonna flip over quickly once they realize that they don't have a choice, or that the banks are relatively safe. Then they'll get it, and then they'll say, "Why in the world did I ever hide all this money in my mattress and let it get all moldy when I can just have a number in my account and I can transfer it electronically?" We do it all now. All of us pay our bills electronically. I mean, it's amazing how quickly it can happen. It took us a generation to do it, you and me, but it's not going to take them a generation. It's going to take them a couple of years, and they're always just going to get it. And they're going to say, "Why didn't we do this to begin with?" Because the whole rest of the world, and once they realize that that's the only way it's done out in the real world, then they'll come along.
No, I agree, and I think I'll just kind of sum this up. I think that we know what the CBI is doing now, that they're going to keep the exchange rate at or near the same for the foreseeable future, for the purpose of stimulating the economy and manufacturing. Raising the exchange rate would reverse this trend, which is not what they want to do. So until Iraq passes the laws, creates the environment for investment, and begins significant economic growth within Iraq, more than likely the exchange rate is going to stay the same. So they're directly related. And again, it's the same as everything else. It's all coming together. And as we've said several times, only with the growth of Iraq's economy can the dinar rise in value. So
right. But I don't think we're not going to see anything on January 1st. That's for sure.
No. The CBI is moving forward with this transition to advance the banking system and to engage globally. How many times did we hear the word globally in these last couple articles here where they're trying to engage? So they're trying to get the banking system ready. At the same time, it looks like they're trying to get the IMF, the World Bank, or the WTO lined up. They're trying to, they're talking about the laws. They're trying to stimulate their economy. There's a lot of things pushing forward here at the same time.
And the more they get people to use electronic money, the lower the chance of corruption.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the CBI is going to continue to support the economic growth by supporting the development in the banking system. They're going to encourage private sector and entrepreneurship. And, this is critical because they want to get rid of this primarily a cash-based society. They're trying to get away from it and go to this digital or electronic money in Iraq.
And eventually the auctions will disappear because the difference between a dollar and a digit is immaterial. You either have money or you don't have money. That's bottom line.
Yeah.
It'll all. There won't be a difference between the dollar rate and the dinar rate, and they won't fluctuate back and forth so people can take advantage of it. All those things that happen in the auction are going to disappear when you go to an electronic system.
Yep. We
hope.
Well, there was a little article, not too long. There was an article that came out a few months ago. It was about expanding Iraq's banks and reform, and it was just a summation. And I thought this was an interesting article because, you know, there's still a lot of hurdles that Iraq has to overcome, but this kind of calls them out. But again, it also kind of confirms what we know. So I'll just read this real quickly. It says, one of the major obstacles to the development of the private sector in Iraq is the lack of access to finance to support its growth. The consensus view is that this is a consequence of Iraq's underdeveloped banking sector, which is dominated by the state. While this diagnosis is, to a certain extent, true, a more accurate way of framing the problem would be to say that Iraq simply does not have a banking system, at least in a way that banking is globally understood or practiced. Iraq has institutions which are referred to as banks, and indeed they perform certain functions that resemble banks. However, with few limited exceptions, Iraq's banks do not perform the essential functions that characterize a modern banking system, whereas banks globally play a major role in the provision of credit and in the functioning of payment systems. Banks in Iraq play second fiddle to cash. So long as cash dominates, there is little room for a robust banking sector to emerge. Examining cash dominance in addition to other challenges, this edition of the Iraqi Economic Review identifies the key obstacles impeding the development of a banking sector in Iraq and considers possible pathways forward. So, yeah, Iraq, obviously that's why the central bank is pushing so hard to go to this transition of a digital economy.
It seems like from this article that the banks in Iraq don't use what's called fractional banking. You know, if you deposit $1,000 in America into a bank, the bank is allowed to loan out $90,000 against that. Believe it or not. And that's how we end up having a very fluid economy. It's because they are able to use fractional banking. If you went in, if all of us went in to get our money today, it just wouldn't be there, because they create money by lending money. So for every $1,000 that's put into a bank, 9 times that is allowed to be lent out by a bank. And that's the rule in America, and I suspect around most of the world. From what I'm reading here in this article, is that they don't have anything like that. And so it's like when we were on the old gold standard back before 1971, you couldn't have high inflation because money was tied to gold. You couldn't fractionally bank. Well, nowadays they can print as much money as they want to, as long as people are willing to put their money in the bank. The banks can print it, and the Federal Reserve does it every day. And so that's why we end up with inflation. And there are good things and bad things, mostly bad, but there are a few good things about inflation. But it enables a fluidity in the economy that does not exist apparently in Iraq. So what becomes a bump for us becomes a jar for them. You know, I mean, rocks the system for them. For us, they either raise the rate, you know, they raise the bank rate by 0.5 point, or they lower it by 0.5 point, and the world goes on. Well, in their case, if they were to, you know, raise the rates, it would kill them, you know, because there's just not that much. There's not enough fluidity in the system due to fractional banking, which they as yet don't have apparently. Right. I don't like fractional banking. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a wise system, but it's what we have, and it's been used ever since 1971 fairly effectively. It's about ready to collapse right now, completely. Mm-hmm. But until then, we have what we have. So I think we're going to go back to it in America. I think in the world it's going to go back to a gold standard. That is, money will have to be backed by assets, because right now the current administration is printing money like it's going out of style. Inflation's going crazy. Right. And that's what happens. That's what happens when you use a fractional banking system. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, so because this is a year-end conference call, there was a couple of achievements at the central bank this past year, so I thought I would cover them real quickly.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
The central bank has improved the reserves in the last year. The Central Bank of Iraq announced today, this was 2 months ago, a rise in the bank's foreign exchange reserves. So the foreign reserves of the central bank increased by 14% compared to what they were at the end of last year. Al-Iraqiya said that it was worth $54 billion on 9/22 of this year. They went from, it was $54 billion, now it's $62 billion. An increase of 7.6%.
In 3 months, less than 3 months, they raised another $10 billion. That's pretty good. $8 billion.
And Prime Minister Mustafa Al-Kazimi announced last April that the central bank's foreign currency reserves had risen to more than $60 billion. So
that's the rise price of oil, right? Isn't it because of oil going up?
Well, I would assume their revenues go up, so that means that
unlike our country, instead of spending it, they put it in their reserve, which is pretty smart.
Yeah.
Especially because their money supply, as you said, is over $100 trillion now. They're raising their reserves to reflect to keep their economy, the value of the dinar strong. That's important.
Right. Yep. And on our next article, this came out in September as well. It says Iraq has more than 96 tons of gold.
Can you believe
the World Gold Council announced that Iraq possesses more than 96 tons of gold as reserves of the precious yellow metal. In its latest schedule for the month of May 2021, the Council said Iraq ranked 38th in the world out of 100 countries. In the table of the largest gold reserves in the world, ranked 5th in the Arab world after Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Algeria, and Libya. Iraq's possession of gold amounted to 96.3 tons, which represents 8.1% of the rest of the other reserves. The United States of America still ranks first with gold reserves at 8,133,000 tons, followed by Germany at 3,362,000 tons, and it goes on from there. So, through all of the pandemic and all of the problems that Iraq has had over the last year, they were able to increase their reserves and their gold, which is a good thing.
That's a very good thing, yes. I had no idea that they still had that much gold. That's fifth in the entire Middle East. That's pretty damn good when you consider that he went through a war 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, and they went they were able to through the ISIS issues as well. Just a few years ago, that they weren't robbed So, and then I have just one more article on the CBI. No, I still got a couple more. I guess we're talking a little bit about the CBI tonight. The central bank has launched a collection system. This is something that came out in July. Of course, this is something new that Iraq was trying to do. This is part of the digital transformation. The central bank announced the imminent launch of an identity that organizes the opening of an account for citizens from their homes, while referring to the preparation of the electronic collection system that the bank has been working on since 2019. This came during hosting the committee to monitor the implementation of the governmental program headed by the Deputy Hassim Al-Khalidi, Governor of the Central Bank Mustafa Ghalib, and a number of government bank managers to discuss the achievements of the ministerial curriculum. The Governor of the Central Bank indicated that the bank demanded that the government to automate border crossings to control the imports of the ports, which comes after oil in terms of importance, pointing to the nearness of creating an electronic collection system, which the bank has been working on since 2019, as well as the digital identity that organizes the opening of an account for citizens from their homes and the transition of paperwork to a digital banking system. The committee raised what?
You mind stopping for a minute?
Yep.
This is what I'm talking about. How we go from the old west to today overnight. I mean, you and I know, everybody on this call knows that if you want to, you can bank from home. I mean, I don't do it very much, but because I'm old. But today, I watched a gal today at the Stater Brothers. That's our grocery store. She came up to buy her groceries in the 15 items or less, and she looked in her wallet, and she only had about $6, and her bill was $15. And she's oh, never mind. And she reached her hand out and pointed her watch toward this machine, and pushed a couple buttons and paid the damn thing out of her watch. Now, I'd never even seen that before. I suppose it's common today. I don't know. I've never seen it before. She paid off of her fucking watch, pardon my French. I was just blown away. He says, no problem, thank you, bye, and she walked off. Well, Iraq now has gone from money under mattress to you can open a bank account in your house and pay a bill. Look, you and I have been doing this for, 15 years, 20 years, ever since the Internet? But they're just getting there. And when they get there, it's going to overnight change the entire country. Overnight, just like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. I didn't.
Yeah, now,
I should.
Obviously we can go online through our computers and pay bills, but there also is, Google Pay and Apple Pay and things now where your phones, you can just tap your phone.
Have you ever seen anybody pay a bill with a watch?
Yeah, I've seen it because it's part of Apple Pay or Google Pay. Your watch is.
I'm too old. I just don't even. Those things just blow me away.
It communicates with your phone.
I hate to say this so directly, but it's all getting to the chip in the skin. That's what it's all getting to.
Yeah, it's stored on your phone. So if your watch is connected to your phone, then that's how you pay. Yeah, I've a couple of years ago, I had my watch is connected to my phone, and I was able to have tickets to sporting events come up on my watch, and I would be able to, when I would go to a sporting event, I would just swipe the barcode on my watch to get in.
Wow.
And people would look at me and they were like, "What?" And I go, "That's the barcode," and then they go, "Okay." And
yeah,
and
well,
I had it on my phone. What's that?
It makes sense.
Yeah, I had it on my phone, but I just transferred it to my watch so that it made it easier just to swipe it. But yeah, it's what's happening. So let's just finish this article here. It says the committee raised questions regarding a number of issues within the work of the central bank, most notably the negative effects of the decision to raise the exchange rate, as well as the absence of the reasons and justifications mentioned for this, especially with the increase in bank sales through the currency sale window and the possibility of filling the deficit after the increase in the price of oil, in addition to the lack of necessary conditions by preserving the local product, the many exceptions to this, and the apparent reluctance of the Made in Project Committee touched on the consequences of raising the exchange rate on the poor and the middle class and stressing the needs. These are just all people that are complaining. So they're trying to remove the paper and implement the digital banking system in Iraq, and of course the plan is they've been working on this since 2019. So
in what you read, I need to go over just real quickly. It says, most notably, the negative effects of the decision to raise the exchange rate, as well as the absence of the reasons and justifications mentioned for this. In other words, the article is saying there's no reason not to raise the exchange rate, except that people still want to come up with them, as you said. They come up with these stupid reasons, but there's no reason not to. And the poor are not going to be adversely affected, believe it or not, nor the middle class, if you raise the exchange rate. What happens within the country, it happens within the country. The dollar goes up and down every day. You and I don't feel it. We don't feel it. Not immediately.
Yeah, I don't want. Let me interrupt you for a second though. They're talking about, when they say raise, they're talking about last year when they raised it, meaning they devalued it.
the valuing of. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they were talking about raising the rate.
So they're saying the negative effects of that are going to hurt the people, so it's not benefiting like they stated. They say it's going to, but yet, they're continuing on. But again, it's just complaining. Obviously, it's benefiting.
Okay, I got you.
It's obviously benefiting the economy at this point.
Yes. And it's necessary.
And it's necessary.
Unfortunately, it's necessary in order to take the shock out of the system. Go ahead.
This is another article. It's called "Enrollment in Digital Transformation: Successful Global Experiences in the Field of Financial Digitization are based on the existence of comprehensive national visions for digital transformation according to a gradual framework that supports the transformation. Digital enrollment is an integrated digital financial system that enhances financial independence and freedom from traditional financial systems. The government should launch this digital enrollment service to keep pace with technical and technological development and its uses to facilitate the task of banking and financial transactions away from bureaucracy and corruption, which is an important transformation in Iraq. This system is working to transform Iraq into a country less dependent on cash, which enables the state to fight corruption, evasion, and bureaucracy in financial transactions with banking operation in Iraq. Digitizing public finances enables governments to increase tax revenue, combat tax evasion, and help raise the efficiency and transparency of public procurement systems. This service is considered a modern and different trend due to its many advantages, including conducting financial operations in a modern digital electronic way, which shortens time in geographical distances and lifts traditional barriers in the Iraqi banking sector. Therefore, work must be done and stressing the need for an integrated vision of digital transformation in light of the changes and developments. This rapid technology in the world on one hand, and on the other hand, is an attempt to control corruption and evade taxes. I don't know. That's just an opinion. So I guess someone's opinion.
Well, the big thing is the corruption and limiting the evasion of taxes. It's like the local. I'm not trying to be pejorative here, but it's like the little Arabian guy that buys a 7-Eleven. He's not paying any taxes. Everything's cash. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you got a W-2, you're going to pay your taxes. And if you get paid through electronic transfer, you're going to pay your taxes. And that's what it comes down to. They're eliminating the cash. Same thing happens in America. They're just trying to eliminate cash societies because too many people get around it. If you're in construction, you get paid by cash if you're lucky. I mean, if your employer will do it for you, and then you'd end up not paying your taxes. Well, if you go cashless, they'll eliminate that, and in that way they eliminate corruption. Not only on the little guy level, but probably at the top, and that's the important thing. At the top, it's terrible. Money going off into Iran and all this back and forth. It's all we have no idea probably just how bad it is, but it's clearly bad, or they would have solved it by now.
Right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what the IMF expects from Iraq and what's been going on.
Like that president that took a plane load of pallets of money and dropped it off in Iran. But there wasn't any tax paid on that.
No.
Sorry, I just had to say that. But anyway.
Okay, so this is again we're summarizing things that came out this year. So the International Monetary expects a recovery of non-oil GDP in Iraq. Again, another positive thing. A report by the International Monetary Fund confirmed that Iraq's economy is recovering from the sharp contraction that it witnessed last year against the background of high oil prices, with the easing of restrictions related to the coronavirus and the increase in vaccination rates. The National quoted in a report translated by the agency, the Monetary Fund, is saying the real non-oil GDP of the country is expected to recover by 12% this year, while the balance of financial and current accounts are expected to improve significantly. After contracting, his officials held an online meeting with the Iraqi authorities regarding the recent economic developments and upcoming policy priorities for the country. He added, inflation in Iraq reached 7.2% last September and is expected to recede in the coming months, and it is expected that the public finance balances and external current accounts will improve significantly in 2021 from a double-digit deficit in 2022, mainly due to high oil prices. He added, Iraq invests $3 billion annually to shift from liquids to gas-powered generation, while high oil revenues represent an important opportunity to address Iraq's major fundamental weaknesses, and it goes on from there. So another optimistic article talking about Iraq's economy recovering and more good news.
Non-oil GDP expected to recover by 12% this year. So think about that. If currently they get 90% out of oil, they're only going to get 78% next year. That's a huge difference if you think about it in 1 year. It means they think something's going to happen this year in the non-oil producing economy, which is what? Agriculture, maybe some manufacturing, but internally.
That would obviously facilitate the WTO, I would think.
Yes, it'd have to be. To trade in this, somehow business, they expect business to grow dramatically this year. I mean, other business, because oil is just oil. You know, oil's been pumping. They've been, but if it changes by 12%, that's an enormous change for 1 year, if you think about it.
Right.
It's like huge.
Well, and we'll just compound on top of that. International Monetary, Iraq will achieve the highest economic growth among all Gulf countries during 2020-21. The International Monetary Fund this came out just a month ago, on Sunday, that Iraq will achieve the highest economic growth among the Gulf countries during the year 2020-21. As the fund said in a table seen by Al Samira News, it's expected that Iraq will achieve economic growth for the year 2021 that is higher than the rest of the oil-rich Gulf countries by 3.6%, adding that economic growth of the Arab Gulf countries and the countries neighboring Iraq will witness disparity. He indicated Saudi Arabia is expected to witness an economic growth of 2.8%, Oman to witness 2.5%, Qatar to witness 1.9%, Kuwait to witness 0.9%, and the UAE to witness 2.2%.
So that means that they're going to be 3.6 above that. They're going to be in the 6.4 range above Saudi Arabia, which is amazing, which means that they know that they expect something to happen this year. Big, non-oil big.
Right. Well, again, all of these things that we've been talking about tonight are pieces of the puzzle to perpetuate them forward.
Right. Yeah, I think they're going to get in the WTO this next quarter. It almost would have to happen if they're going to get that kind of growth. Which means they're almost always also going to have to get in out of Article 14 of the IMF Charter, so that they can free up some money to come into the country. Because how are you going to get that change, that kind of a disparity in growth between you and your neighbors? They have oil. We have. It's got to be non-oil. It's all got to be. All the growth has to be non-oil. Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, that's good news. We've had a nice evening.
Well, and I'll just kind of, we'll go into a Q&A here in a little bit. I just kind of summarize a little bit. I think this is a couple of things from last year, from the Article 4 consultation that they talked about. the CBI, this was from the IMF, they directly stated that they needed freedom of movement of capital. In the Article 4 consultation, it said that a move towards acceptance of obligations of Article 8 of the IMF's Articles of Agreement will send a positive signal to the investor community that Iraq is committed to maintain an exchange system that is free of multiple currency practices and restrictions from current international transactions, and thus facilitate creation of a favorable business climate. Again, this was last year, but you can see that it does fall in place with what they're moving towards. The government will implement reforms to strengthen the anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism, AML, CFT frameworks, and this will contribute to improve the integration of the domestic financial system into the global economy. So again, they're working towards getting these laws, going to this digital economy, which will allow them to integrate into the global financial system. We know the plan is still to float the dinar. That's how monetary policy works. For a country to raise its currency value, it has to be done properly as a result of the success of Iraq's economic growth. It's not a random act. Floating the national currency is intended to, what happens when you do that is it leaves the national currency in order to determine its price. It's intended to leave in a free market. According to the forces of supply and demand, the national currency lays down its realistic rate with influence, market mechanisms within an organized free market. Floating the dinar means canceling the subsidy, the auctions, providing the state to the currency by selling it as at subsidized prices. Last year at this time they were calling for the activation of the private sector. Since then, they created the white papers to identify and fix the structural problems within Iraq's economy, the inclusiveness of Iraq's government to fix these issues and create a private sector away from non-oil. And then there was last year on 12/20/2020, so 1 year ago, this article came out. Specialists in economic affairs called for the need to support the private sector to contribute to promote economic development and maximizing the country's financial resources. A member of the Economy and Investment Committee, MP Atwan Al-Atwani, said the blackmail and bureaucracy is a major reason for disrupting private sector projects, pointing out that there are great pressures on the private sector and it may be unintended, but rather as a result of poor organization. He added that there's no enmity between the public and private sectors as is rumored, but rather there's poor organization in the relationship between the two sectors, indicating the specifications of local products produced by the private sector are not comparable with international products as well as they are higher cost. And then there was another article last year on 11/27 that says, next year, Iraq joins the World Trade Organization. And of course, we're a year later and they haven't, but it says joining the organization has positive repercussions in the long run, as Iraq may not reap its fruits directly, but there will be a strong and integrated Iraqi economy capable of competing with the economies of the member states of the organization in general and the economies of neighboring countries in particular, as joining Iraq will allow to enter into fair competition for goods and services with other member states. So, this has been going on for a while.
Yeah, what it shows, Kate, is that you have been right from the get-go. That is that, sure, the timing has never been right. That we're never going to be right on the timing when it comes to Iraq. But the process is exactly the way you've been describing it for the last few years. And we're all frustrated, but at least they're moving exactly in the direction that they say they wanted to move. And that you can't fault them for that. Who knows what kind? You just mentioned corruption at a level. I used a word I can't remember in one of those statements you just made, and it triggered me. It was like we have no idea the level of corruption that may exist. and how they're fighting it. I mean,
yeah. Well, and the time frame it takes.
yes, or the time frame it takes to fix it. Think about America and our last election. You know, I suspect most everybody on this call thinks that the election was stolen. Well, we all are frustrated, right? If those of us who believe it, and think that things should have happened by now, but they haven't, and yet we wait and we wait and we expect and we wait and you know, time goes on and we hope that something may change. Well, the same thing must happen every day, every decade in Iraq at a much slower pace. They really do have goals. It's just that getting to them may be very, very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I read an article once a while ago about these laws, and we talked about it. You know, that Iraq has a lot of these laws already passed, and it's important for them at some point. And maybe they're just waiting till they have everything in place. But it's important. It's important that they activate these to limit the spread of corruption, and the failure to implement them properly contributes to additional corruption. So, Parliament.
The term you read was blackmail. It was,
right, yeah.
The term was blackmail. I'm going, well, gee, that makes sense. There's probably a lot of big people in high places that are saying, just like the deep, you know, if you're into conspiracy theory, it's like the deep state in America, or worldwide for that matter. Who knows, you know, who knows what evil forces are behind anything anymore? You just don't know.
Right. All right,
they shut things down so that they can continue to take in Iraq money and send it to, or dollars for Iraq, you know, paper for paper, and then send it over to Iran. Who knows what's going on? We just don't know. We just don't know.
Right. Well, we're kind of running out of time. So what we're going to do is, if people want to, we always like, especially on a year-end call, do a Q&A. So this is a different conferencing system. So those that want to chat a little bit, you have to hit 5-star, and that'll put you in a queue to begin a conference call. If I can figure this out, I guess.
Well, while you're trying to figure it out, I think we've had a really good call, and I'm not tooting my horn, I'm tooting your horn. I think you pulled together some really important stuff to show that progress is being made. There's no, you know, for those Frank 26s and Deltas and out there that are talking RV every other day, it's such a bunch of crap. I swear. You know, it's a process, and it's moving. It's just not moving quite as fast as we'd like. But if you think for your minute that you're going to get to $3.50 to $5, or I heard $13 the other day from somebody, it's just crazy. You know, overnight, there's just not that much money in the world, so just forget it. We're looking for a float, and that's it. We're looking for a float and a real country with real money floating its currency. That's it. No miracles.
Yeah. All right, so I do have somebody in here.
And I think if that happens, you're going to see substantial growth, because if they've literally got 60 billion in reserves against even 100 trillion in currency, that's still 85 cents on a dollar, and America only has 15 cents on a dollar in its currency, and we have the strongest currency in the world. So that means their currency is pretty damn strong. That's what I think.
All right. Again, if you want to join in, you have to hit 5-star, and you get in. You can chat with us for a little bit. We're going to probably do this for about 15 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Here's somebody here, area code 908. You're on. Did I get you? Maybe not. Hello. 908.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
We got you.
Yeah, I just want to know if you guys have any idea when this, first of all, if the RV is going to take place, and if so, when do you expect it to happen?
Well, you haven't been listening to the call, because we've been saying over and over and over again, there is no such thing as an RV. So You're wasting your time if you're looking for one. This is not going to happen like that. If the dinar ever goes up in value, it will go up over time, gradually. Could take weeks, months, or years to go up. It'll be based on the growth of the economy. It's not going to be some lottery ticket where you wake up and it happens. It just won't do it that way. There's 100 trillion dinars. 100 trillion dinar in circulation.
When are we going to be able to take our paper money in and exchange it?
There's no such thing. Not going to happen.
So what's going to happen then?
It's going to go up over time.
Have you been on the call? Here's what's going to happen. Iraq is eventually going to remove themselves from Article 7 next month of the UN Charter. Then they're going to remove themselves from Article 14 of the IMF Charter, putting themselves under Article 8 of the IMF Charter, which gives them freedom to interact internationally, economically with all the countries of the world. Then they will, at the same time, probably, or close to that, they will join the World Trade Organization, which will give them freedom to trade worldwide. Once they've done that, and when they do that, they have to have an internationally traded currency, which means they must get off of the fixed rate and onto, well, no, they don't have to get off the fixed rate. But in order for them to trade economically, they're going to get off the fixed rate and move to what's called a float. When they move to the float, for two big reasons, the currency value will rise. The first reason is that they have the highest reserves relative to the amount of currency they have in circulation of any country in the world. And the second is that they also have some of the best resources in the world. And third, they have the best economic opportunity to grow like the Wild West of any place on the planet today. Those three factors will cause the value of the dinar to rise, in my opinion, rapidly. Now, whether that's a year or 3 years, I don't know, but I would not be surprised to see it get to $3.50, your favorite number, RVers, within 2 or 3 years. But it's not going to happen overnight. It cannot happen overnight. When you have 100 trillion dinars in circulation, if you go to 350 overnight, you now have 1,000 trillion dinars out there, and there's not that much money in the world, for God's sakes. You can't do it, period.
Yeah, it has to be gradual over time, and it'll be based on the success of this economic plan, the growth of the economy, how they prosper, if they're able to develop this manufacturing and agriculture and tourism. As the GDP grows, and the economy grows, so will the dinar. But like you said, it could take 6 months, it could take 3 years.
That's right. That's it, bottom line. And we don't know when it will start, to answer your second question. Nobody knows when it'll start.
Anybody else want to join in? 5-star. Hit 5-star on your phone and join in and say hello. Yeah, you get these people listening in that have been reading this crap from these gurus for years.
Well, yeah.
They're nothing but storytellers. They're just storytellers. It's a daily story. And people buy dinar and they fall for this, reading this crap, and then they listen to us for the first time and they go, oh my God, this isn't the same thing.
Yep.
So, well, we don't have anybody in the queue. I thought there would be a lot of people jumping in, considering it's a year-end call, and they want to say hello, but nobody else has hit 5-star.
Our regulars know better. They know better than to think that it's going to happen overnight. Only people who think it's going to happen overnight are going to call in and ask a question. They're going to say, when's it going to happen? We don't know anybody more than anybody else does. What we do know is that nobody else knows. That's what we know.
Right.
We know that Frank 26 has no idea. He makes everything up that he says.
Yeah. Oh, here we got somebody joining in here. Let me see who this is. Area code 224. 224, you're on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, dear. Nice to hear from you. Who are you?
My name's Carol, and I'm new to the call and to your organization. Somebody invited me to this. I do have some dinar. But I just wanted to thank you for a straightforward talk on it, because you're right. You see and hear all these things on YouTube and online. You don't know what to think, what to believe. Did I miss it? Did I not miss it? So
Really,
I think that you explained it very clearly and gave us realistic expectations, what to look for.
Very good.
So thank you.
Well,
thank you, Carol. I'm glad you said that. And incidentally, the rapture did not happen last week as thought.
Okay. Somebody put something out recently that we have a window next week of the $11 revaluation, and I'm like,
no.
Like I didn't buy that myself, and I don't know anything about it. So,
well, let me just, let me just tell you, I've been in this for 13 years, and I've been hearing this stuff for so many years, and we've been doing these conference calls for so many years. I'm glad that you finally were able to get on our call and listen, but the reality is that this is a war-torn country that was demolished, and they are rebuilding the entire infrastructure from the ground up, and it takes a long time, and it's not ever going to be a lottery ticket. I can assure you, by buying Iraqi dinar, you bought a currency of a country that is a real currency, but it's not going to randomly go up overnight. If it does go up, it will go up based on the growth and success of Iraq rebuilding that country.
Mm-hmm.
And there are no whales that have already cashed in, and there are no secret 1, 2, and 3 levels. All that's crap that's just made up by people like Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I've been hearing for years 2 people going to Reno to cash in. It's all a scam.
Yeah,
all that
and there are no call centers with people sitting waiting to take your call. They've been waiting there for 3 years, if that was the case, because we've been talking about that for that long. Call centers.
Mm-hmm.
What a bunch of crap.
But you said that, if I understood this correctly, that eventually, like you were saying with ours too, they want to go to a cashless system, basically. So if Iraq does too, and we have cash, will there be a time where they'll let you exchange it?
Well, you're never gonna.
It's just like the dollar. You got dollars in your wallet, right?
Yeah. So the same.
But we're essentially moving to a cashless society, but nobody's taking your dollars out of your wallet and saying they're worthless.
No.
They're still worthless. They still have value. If you want to put them in the bank, put them in the bank.
And let me just tell you that first of all, people have always said, so what do we do when it goes up in value? Well, first of all, nobody knows, because until it happens, nobody knows what the process will ever be.
That's right. They don't know the rules.
But I can assure you the dinar that was sold outside of Iraq will never go back to Iraq. Former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, Mohammed Salih, stated a long time ago that they sold Iraqi dinar outside of the country to create a hard currency sold around the world for a very long time. In other words, the dinar that you hold will eventually go into the financial system, but it will never go back to Iraq. It'll go to central banks around the world, and it will be held to, just like other foreign currencies are held in central banks around the world. So
it'll turn into like a euro or a dollar or a pound, the British pound, and it'll sit in a reserve bank and be held. Even though it's a piece of paper, it'll be held as if it were a reserve currency. In the articles tonight, it said Iraq is sitting on whatever it was, 8.5 tons of gold, which represented 8% of its total reserves. So in other words, the other 92% is pieces of paper.
Right.
But the dinar, when it revalues and goes up and up and up and up, will eventually become a world reserve currency, according to Mohammed Salih, who was at one time the head of the central bank, and he said it will be held there in reserve, just like as if it were gold.
Yeah. The process in which that you will ever give your dinar back through a banking system or into the banking system is undescribed at this time. Nobody knows. We have ideas that there will be organizations or companies that will facilitate any paper that is out there around the world, whether it's through a brokerage firm. I don't think banks will be involved because most banks don't like to deal with emerging markets, especially countries that are unstable. So there's probably it's highly unlikely that you would ever go into like a Wells Fargo and cash it because it's too volatile for them. So it probably will end up, again, this is speculation, but it probably will end up where there's brokerage firms that allow you to open trading accounts where you can deposit your dinar and watch it rise as it's traded on Forex over time as it grows based on the growth of their economy. But again, it's getting ahead of ourselves. I really hate talking about that because we don't know. We just don't know. Mm-hmm. There's not. I can assure you that there's not going to be a legitimate place that you'll just walk in with a briefcase full of your dinar and cash it out. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and walk out with millions of dollars. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. At best, once they get out of Chapter 7 next month, and once they get into Article 8, and once they float, then over time, major banks will treat them like a real world currency. So you might be able to go in and trade but you're going to trade them at the current rate, which is going to be nothing at this point, which is what we own, nothing. Mm-hmm. $14.60 the dollar. But if it gets down to where it's worth 10 cents, I'm sure there'll be a Wells Fargo say, yeah, we'll take them. You got 25,000. I'll give you $25 for it, or whatever, or $250 for it, whatever the number is. The point is, it's going to take time. That's the point. Mm-hmm. And once it becomes internationally recognized, it'll be treated just like any other international currencies. I don't know what Wells Fargo does with yen. I have no idea. If they take them, fine. If they don't, that's okay. There's somebody that'll take them. Mm-hmm. But you take an African country, for instance. I have no idea what they would do with a Zimbabwe, whatever they call their currency. I don't even know. That's up to you and your bank. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I think by
normal. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is it'll eventually just become normal.
Correct. That makes sense.
Okay?
It all makes sense. So I'm glad that I'm on the call.
And there aren't going to be any big trade centers. There's not going to be big trade centers. There's not going to be, the whales versus tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If you believe in that stuff, you're just smoking the wrong pot.
Gotcha. All right. Oh, that all
right, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Carol. Nice to meet you. Glad to have you be a part of our team.
I got one more here because we still got a couple of minutes. Area code 479. 479, you're on.
Yeah, do you know, has anybody checked on the Treasury officials that have been sequestered for the past 10.5 years? Waiting for the RV to happen. You remember back, I don't know, probably 10 years ago when they said they had all the Treasury officials sequestered, ready for the RV?
That's
do you think anybody's checked on them, maybe sent them some Christmas cookies or something?
Yeah, they're probably in one of those COVID camps in Australia.
I was a little late because I think I had the wrong code. But, Nursey, what did you say you thought would happen in the first quarter of 2022?
They're just about ready to be let out of Chapter 7 officially, completely out of Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which means that all of their debts are paid to Kuwait. That's the next step. Once that happens, then they're free to do whatever they want. They have the choice to go from Article 14 of the IMF Charter, which protects them against certain lawsuits, into Article 8 of the IMF Charter, which puts them in with the big boys, where they can trade internationally. That'll be their choice. We don't know when they'll do that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did it shortly after they got out from under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. And once they do that, they, in my opinion, and I don't know if Kate agrees with me on this, they would be foolish not to do it unless they floated their currency first or at the same time.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole bunch of things here coming to a head, and of course the WTO is going to be a part of that because they're going to want to, if they're going to begin trading internationally, they're going to want to start engaging with the global financial system for the business with global business through the WTO.
And you can't do that without an internationally traded currency.
But again, there's a lot of other factors that are holding things up. We're still waiting on laws. We're still waiting on the government hasn't been formed. This could drag out, as we've seen in the past. The elections were over a couple of months ago. They still haven't had a consensus yet to form a government. That could drag out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more months. Who knows? So you've got to have a unified government, a new prime minister, a new president. Then you need to swear in your minister, your parliamentary members, so that they can begin to pass those laws that are necessary. So,
having said that, I would say that the fact that the WTO has expressed interest in bringing them in is an indication that there's an anticipation on the international scene to get this ball moving. And
I think there's a lot of encouragement. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Iraq still has to do its thing, and it's just recalcitrant in how slow they move. It just pisses you off how slowly they move. But if they activate the laws they passed, even we could get there. Just about.
Something on a little bit different note of that. Do you think there is a global currency reset coming back to the gold at some point?
I do.
Yeah. Well, and then one more thing, because I know you want to go. Do you think it's okay for me to take my security detail off a hold for when I go to the bank and get my suitcase of the money? Can I let them?
Yeah, you could take the padlock off your wrist and
okay.
the platinum suitcase you've been carrying around for the last 6 years.
Yeah, all right. Thanks so much.
That was funny. That was really good.
Yeah. All right, we got one more quick. We'll throw them in here, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Security detail. I love that security detail.
Yeah. Yeah. Area 224. 224. You're on. Hello.
Maybe that was mine again. It just clicked back on for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Is this Carol? Hi, Carol.
Yeah, I didn't press it again.
Oh, okay.
But
all right, well, thank you.
Got me on. Just real quick, do you guys do anything about the dong, or do you know anything about that, or no?
No,
not a thing.
Not a thing.
Okay.
A lot of those other currencies are just side plays to help, that these gurus that perpetuate this nonsense. It's just a revenue generator for them. So, to me, there's no relationship whatsoever. Iraq is a war-torn country that is rebuilding. These other countries are dependent on competing with themselves and other countries, and they're not even anything that I would get involved with.
All right.
I agree with Kate.
All right. Okay.
You think about it. If 1,000 to 1 is not enough for you, let's go for 10,000 to 1. If we're gonna make a scam, let's make it really wild. Let's go to a little county, little place called Vietnam, and just tell them they're going to go up 10,000 to 1.
Yeah.
And people will suck into it, and they do. They buy it. They buy it all.
Well, yeah. I have an opinion on that. That Vietnam is competing with China and those other big countries over there for those contracts, and you don't see those countries raising their rates, then you're not going to see Vietnam doing anything either. That's just my opinion. Anyways, thank you, Steve.
I agree, and I know nothing about it.
Yeah. It's the end of the call here. I want to thank everyone for coming on. I hope everybody has great, happy holidays here. Steve, once again, thank you for your views, chatting here and communicating. Yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed the call, and I just want to end it. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.